Hello, everybody, and welcome to Money Matters. If you like to make money and learning about crypto as well as other investment ideas and topics, please subscribe to the channel. If you enjoy the content, then hit that like button as well. Let's get into it. As usual, this channel is devoted to your financial freedom. And as a disclaimer, I am not a financial advisor, nor do I give financial or investment advice. If you need such advice, please contact your local accredited investment advisor. All righty, let's take a quick look at the markets. It's the same old situation. Boring. However, Ethereum still holds the candle in the clouds and mist of all of the other coins wallowing around in the muck. It's again, it's detached from everything. It's a stellar performer. I think that 32 sometime next week is where we're heading. But for right now, the rest of the market is in a consolidation. Bitcoin just can't get above that 55, 56 level. And I think that tomorrow we may see something that changes that. And we're going to talk about that today. And you will be happy. In the news, the Federal Reserve Chairman, Jerome Powell, thinks capital markets, as typified by the Dogecoin craze, this is typical politics anyway, are a bit frothy. He said the central bank's easy money policy may have had something to do with that froth. And this is the most interesting part. Powell restated that the U.S. is entirely uninterested in running a digital currency race against China, which is testing the digital yuan now. I don't know if you believe that. I don't think that I do. I think that there are meetings going on every night trying to understand what is happening and what the United States can do to prevail and maintain its currency dominance throughout the world. So I don't believe this for 1 second, but I'd like to hear if you do. So leave a comment below and let me know what you think. In Bitcoin news, and here's where we're getting into the good stuff. Contracts are about to expire, and that is tomorrow, which is 30 minutes from now. Currently, there are about 75,000 open-end contracts set to expire, about $4 billion, which is $1 billion shy of the quarterly expire last month, which was had quite the impact. And we'll look at that in just a second. But you can see here on the chart that there is there's a lot ready to fall. So what we're going to see is a lot of movement within the market, a lot of money coming out, and then a lot of new money coming back in with some new options, and it does affect the price. So let's just see how. In terms of how things might look, we can look at the last event, and this is typical. If you go back in time and you go through history with respect to these dates, you'll see that typically over a few days, maybe 4 or 5 day period of time, you'll see a jump in price for Bitcoin. So I think the average that I found was right around 17%. So if this trend continues, and if this is something, if history repeats itself, and this is something that we're looking for tomorrow or over the next few days, and how interesting it is that tomorrow is Friday, and we've been in the cycle of things happening over the weekend. So I'm not saying anything about that. However, I do think that we will see some drastic price changes, drastic compared to what we've been seeing here lately anyway, over the next few days. And I'm excited about it. We'll probably be having some pretty intense videos over the weekend, so stay tuned on that one. But if we do reach the levels that we're looking for, we should pop above that 55 to 57 ceiling that we've been bumping our heads on and move past that. And again, if we get through the 60,000, 62,000, it's no whole bar. We're going to go for broke, I think, this time around. So we should see some pretty steady increases once we get past that. In addition, next week, and this is some other good news. Well, it's good, I guess, compared to where you're looking at it from. But Grayscale is unlocking their 6-month period next week. So when over-the-counter investors purchase Grayscale shares, like GBTC Bitcoin fund, they have to lock that money up for 6 months. And periodically that money is released. So what happens is those investors typically cash that money out and then run into Bitcoin and actually buy Bitcoin. And it's kind of like you could call it an arbitrage, but they make a ton of money in that process. And if you play it right with GBTC, you can follow the leader on that one. It's I got burned a couple of times back in 2017 before I knew how it worked. And even this year with the Ethereum Trust, I got, it was horrible, but I missed it by 1 day. 1 day. Anyway, if you're interested in that, you can read up on the Grayscale effect and how it impacts the price of Bitcoin. So it should be a positive impact, and I'm assuming that all of next week is going to be kind of peppered with the effects of that. So keep an eye on the price of Bitcoin. Again, these are two big things that are happening that will impact the price of Bitcoin. One other note, and we'll talk about this a little bit later too, in the final line here, is that the supply of Bitcoin and ETH on exchanges is dropping so fast. It's never dropped this fast before. In fact, I'll probably be doing a video on this in the next couple of days, just talking about the supply of Bitcoin and Ethereum on the exchanges. And I'm going to throw Ethereum in there because there is so much interest from institutional investors, and there's just not a lot of it around. And I think that has quite a bit to do with what's happening with the price of Ethereum now. But we'll delve into that very deeply. And in fact, we'll probably have a little mini series on Ethereum. I think that it'd be pretty interesting to tell people what Ethereum is, where it came from, the benefits of it, all of the different things that it's into, not just, buying and selling on an exchange. We're talking about NTS. We're talking about just about everything that's built on top of it. So I think that would be a pretty interesting series to do, and hopefully you guys would enjoy it. But we're going to talk about supply on chain, and it is it's unbelievable. All right, today we're going to talk about the Bitcoin super cycle. Some people say we are in the midst of a super cycle. Some people say we're on the cusp of a super cycle, and some people say you're crazy, there's no such thing as a super cycle. So we're going to look at that right now, and you can come up with your own conclusion, and I'm going to show you some of the things that I found while I did my investigating into the elusive super cycle. We've never had one before, so that's why I say elusive. First, let's look at Retrace and Possibilities. So typically, if you've been around Bitcoin for a while, or if you've read a lot about it, you know that there's cycles. These cycles are very regular, they're very predictable, and in the past, when Bitcoin has gone on a bull run, like in 2017, it went up to $20,000, then I bought it, and then it dropped to like $3,000. So the drop from the top is the retracement that I'm talking about here. So typically, that retracement is fairly severe. I mean, we're talking like 50, 80%. These are big dips in price. And of course, that always led to buying opportunities in the past. If you buy Bitcoin at $3,000, you wait 3 years or 4 years for it to come around and sell it at 64,000. That's a pretty good return on your investment. So that retracement is kind of what we're talking about here. The word on the street is that this time around, and I am of this line of thinking as well, that is not going to happen. It can't happen, and here's why. We've talked about supply. We'll talk about it again and again and again. We'll also talk about investors that are coming from the institutional level. I've read about some universities that have been, I think it was University of Colorado or I read it today, where they put $14 million of their trust into Bitcoin, and that's one of hundreds. We are going to see more and more and more institutional money coming in. Germany just announced today exposure to crypto markets that is going to absolutely impact the price of Bitcoin. So if you think about all of these people trying to push their way in, and granted, these folks can't just write a check or take this money out and put it in there. There's a long process to get this money out and reallocated to a different asset class. So over time, you're going to see that speed up and the frequency becoming much and much much more close to one another, at least in announcement levels. So with that in mind, the idea of Bitcoin being able to drop 80% is almost impossible. And that's evident if you look at some of the charting on Bitcoin on a daily basis. You'll see a wick where we drop down $7,000 and it's for a split second and then it comes right back up. Why is that? Well, because there's a lot of institutions and people with lots of money who have buy orders in for 7,000 less than the current price. So when the price wicks down, they snack it up right away. So with that in place and all of these new buyers coming into the market and the supply being so low, this retracement level will not be anything like 80%. In fact, we will look at some calculations based on different percentages. Actually, I think I used an average of 35%, which is kind of on the rough side. But in my mind, I kind of think that that's apropos because we're looking at 20% drops over, I think we've had 5 of them so far on this bull run. So it's not something out of the ordinary. So 35, which is a little more severe, I don't think is an issue. Not only that, I don't think that it will be identified as one single retracement. I think it's just going to retrace, come back up, retrace, come back up, and it's not going to be anything that truly affects the price of Bitcoin. So let's take a look here. What could the price be for Bitcoin during this super cycle if we are in a super cycle? So this is very interesting. We'll look at the price of Bitcoin today, which the last moment I checked, it was just like 11 o'clock or something. It was at 53.5. So when I do these calculations, that's where I made my basis. So we'll use a retracement average of 30%, I'm sorry, and we'll apply this to some of these different predictions on price that some other people have had, including myself. So my floor, I'm still sticking to it as 42. I know that it's rising every day. And I think I read today that 52 to 54, something like that is the floor, but I don't think so. We've been dipping below that consistently for a while now. And so I'm not going to call that a floor. So a real floor is going to be something that you're going to drop back to if you have a retracement. And I think that's about 42,000. It's going up every day. And I told my oldest, or both of my sons, that we will never see Bitcoin drop to 30 ever again. I do not think that that's ever going to happen. So, and I'm saying that because the time I told him I was wanting to buy it at 30, but I was getting into some other stuff at the time. But anyway, I digress. So my floor level is about 42. The most popular targets out there. And when I say that, I look at a lot of people who are predicting the price of Bitcoin in articles. There's a lot of analysts on Wall Street for different funds and things like that. And I'll be the first person to say that I do not give them much credence. I think that they're late to the party. I think they have a lot of learning to do. And I also think that I'm going to say politically business motivated. In other words, there is a lot of FUD in the market, people who are trying to manipulate the price based on either who owns the publication or who has a vested interest in something. So I typically try to stay with, people who are accredited in the sphere. So anyway, about 158,000 is what I found to be the average price people are calling for. And when we also think about this super cycle, we have to think of timing. The timing that we're looking at for these pricing predictions here is at the end of this year, beginning of next year. So somewhere in December, January timeframe. That is what we're kind of looking at here. My top target, as we've already talked about for Christmas Day, was 417,000. And I went through a whole analysis on that. And based on historical information, based on the supply, I'm sticking to it. Plan B, which is stock to flow, is right around 288,000, which actually I've seen some updates to that calculation, and I read through the formula very thoroughly, and I was looking at some other mathematical analysis, and it was deep. But it's been adjusted, and 288 is what it's coming up with. Now, super cycle numbers, there's several people who have been pushing the whole idea of a super cycle for some time, and the numbers come in at different levels. But what I've kind of ascertained is at the lower level, we're looking at just under 400,000. And at the upper level, we have, there's a zero missing there. Sorry, somewhere about 1.2 million on up. And so I think that the marching number is a 1 million as the high price for a quote super cycle. So you could probably take that one to the bank. Now, is that going to happen? In my mind, I don't think so. I mean, it could, there's a small probability of it, but in my mind, I think that we're looking more towards the $500,000 mark for our initial stop. When Bitcoin flips gold, we're going to see some massive shifts in the market, and I think that we'll see much higher prices at that point in time. So let's look at some of the things that back up these numbers, or back up the idea that a super cycle is possible. The demand for Bitcoin is and will continue to rise. You see it every day. And even when it pops down low on the news channels, you still hear people talking about Bitcoin. And remember, we're still in the early phases of adoption, less than 10%. It's going to be very, very different in a few years. Supply. We are less than 3 million Bitcoin available on all exchanges. It's closer to 2 million, something like 2.3 million. I couldn't get the exact number. Of course, it's probably pretty difficult to do that, but the walking around number is 3 million. The more exact number is something like 2.3 million. That's small. That's not very much. That's for everybody. That's for all the institutions, all the Michael Saylors, all the Googles, all the whoever wants to come in and buy it. That's all that's available. So that being said, remember, supply and demand. Demand goes up, supply goes down. What happens to price? It goes up. So this is a fact. This is happening, and it's going to affect the price. Hundreds of institutional buyers, and these are just ones that we know about or can get an inkling about, are coming in and grabbing every Bitcoin that's available, especially on dips. So with that methodology taking place, and the consistency, the level of consistency that's taking place, the idea of the support levels just going higher, higher, and higher is greater and greater and greater. So the idea of a super cycle to me is not out of the ballpark. It's not even, it's completely within the realm of possibilities. In fact, I am leaning heavily towards that philosophy. Look at my price prediction for December. That's pretty crazy, but I've looked at the numbers and it's not like it's out of this world. It can happen. Historically, it has happened. All right, let's do a quick recap because we covered some stuff here today. The market is still in the process of walking the halls like a zombie in World War Z with the movie with Brad Pitt. That was one of the best zombie movies I've ever seen. It was pretty good. But anyway, that's what it reminds me of. It's just bouncing off the walls and moaning and not doing much of anything. But that's going to change. I think this weekend, beginning of next week, we are going to see the clouds disappear from the sky and the birds chirping and really good things happening with respect to Bitcoin. The United States is entirely uninterested in running a digital currency race with China. I don't believe that at all. Actually, they may not want to run a race. They just want to win it. They're in it to win it. And they probably will. Bitcoin open contracts are set to expire tomorrow, tomorrow. And we should see, if history prevails and historical numbers come back again, we should see our overhead resistance level of 55, 57 released. And if that happens and we continue to go up over 60, get between 60 and 62, all bets are off. We're off to the races at that point in time. So it's very exciting. This upcoming week is going to be one of the most exciting weeks that we've had so far in the spring. We could very well be in the midst of a super cycle and on the way to some amazing returns. Again, we could be in the beginning of it. We could be in the middle of it. We could be somewhere, but I do believe that we are in a Bitcoin super cycle, and we will start to see evidence of that as we move along through the year. It's very, very exciting. I would like to hear your thoughts on the matter. I'd like to hear what you think about the idea of a super cycle. If you think we're in a super cycle, and if you believe that we can attain some of the lofty levels that are indicated within a super cycle, and what those may be in your mind. I would also like to give a shout out to my oldest daughter, Charlie, and her husband, Will, for patiently listening to me babble on and on about finance all of the time. And I'm hoping that they watched my video last night on dollar cost averaging Bitcoin, buying Bitcoin weekly with money set aside, and watch it grow. 4 years from now, you'll say, Dad, you're so smart. We just can't believe that we didn't do this before. So we'll see. Watch out for scammers. They are out there looking for your money. They want your identity. And I've seen some, you should go online and watch some videos on scammers and some of the people who catch scammers. It's pretty funny. But be careful, be vigilant. This is a serious matter, and you do not want to get burned. And of course, last but not least, winners never quit, and quitters never win. Always give your very best effort to overcome the challenges that you face in life. I hope you had a great day. I had a fantastic day, and I will see you tomorrow.